Hi, this is Federico with Cuttle, and this video is going to be an exploration in making geometric patterns with Cuttle. And it all started because I ran into this book at the public library, and I was like browsing through it, and I found that it had a lot of sort of black and white geometric art that I really liked. And as I looked at it, I realized that I could make a lot of the stuff using Cuttle. So I started sketching some of it. I did another live stream video where I explained a lot of the techniques that are used there. But I figured it would be fun to make another video where I just do a sort of like speed run or something, where I make a bunch of the patterns with a little explanation, but I think I want to go a little bit faster this time. So I want to start by browsing through the book. And at the beginning, there are a few patterns that are perhaps a bit more complex, but we can get to these. I wanted to start with the first one that kind of caught my attention, which is this one. I'm going to make this preview screen a little smaller so I can keep it here as a reference. And then in general, I'm going to name each component that I make with the page number. So when I share the project, there's going to be a page number there. And most of the designs, I think I want to constrain them to a 4-inch circle. So I'm going to create a guide. I'm going to call it the guide component so I can reuse it. And that's just going to be a 4-inch diameter circle that I'm going to use just as a loose guide to create my designs. All right, so let's start with that first one. So I'm going to place my guide on the center, and then I'm just going to create a line. So it's going to be a line roughly like this. Most of the time, I'm going to use a non-hairline stroke, so I get like some thickness to that line. And then this one just takes a rotational repeat. So let's start with that. I'm going to add a rotational repeat. I can count the number of arms that this one has, and I think it's 8. And so that's my starting point. So now to these, I'm going to apply a flatten. Maybe I don't need the guide anymore. So I'm going to flatten it. And then one easy option is to duplicate that same path. So I'm going to right click, duplicate, and then I want to apply an expand, which creates a sort of offset. And then on top of that, I'm going to outline the stroke. So that gives me that outline. And then these corners are kind of pointy in the original design. So I can make those joints miter, which gives me the pointiness here at the joint. And so I can now just repeat the operation. I'm going to duplicate the same one. And I'm going to make the expand a little bit bigger to create that second line. All right, so that's the first one. Let's make another one. So I'm going to create another component. I'm going to bring my guide in, and then let's browse through it. So this one on the next page kind of caught my attention because it has these concentric circles that are like masked in an offset way. So I'm going to try and do that. So I'm going to start with a circle. I'm going to make it way smaller to start with. Yeah, about 1/2 inch. And so here's the trick. So as usual, I'm going to make the stroke non-hairline. So it has some thickness to it. Then with this one, I'm going to use a trick to make the concentric circles, which is I'm going to use a linear repeat, but with no displacement. So 0 displacement. So all of the repeats are in the same spot. Then I'm going to customize each repetition, which gives me this rep variable. And so now on the scale, I can use that variable. So I'm going to type rep for repetitions so that it's a scale in it kind of evenly. It's going 0, 1, 2, 3 for the diameter. But we can change that by multiplying it by some fraction. So actually, maybe I want to scale it about 0.4 or so every time. Then I'm going to increase the number of repetitions. So it just kind of fills everything. And then I'm just going to use my guide circle to offset the placement. Okay, so at this point, I want to apply a mask, but it's usually better to take the shape that is going to be masking the other shape and put it on top. So I'm going to move my guide on top, and then I'm going to apply the modifier called mask. So it's very close. The only thing is that now my strokes have like a rounded cap. So I just wanted the mask to just cut it perfectly. So instead of doing these, I'm gonna flatten the strokes on the original pattern. So there we go. So that is the second one. Let's look at more pages here. So this one caught my attention as well because it's also a rotational repeat. Let's create a new component. So, and I'm gonna do page 9 now for that one. So the important part here is that I need to know how many rotations there are. So I know this one has 24 repetitions, and the shape looks to me like a circle with a triangle. So I'm gonna bring in a circle, put it roughly outside. Then I'm gonna apply a rotational repeat to that circle. I know it's 24 repetitions, so I'm gonna type 24. But I want the circles to be right next to each other. So I'm gonna change the scale until I get the circles to be just roughly the right size. I want those circles to be black. So let me give them black fill. And now I'm gonna create like a triangle. And I'm gonna start with a triangle that is just sort of square or like symmetric. I drew it there with my pen tool. I'm gonna give it a black fill. And I can also just give this triangle a rotational repeat with 24 repetitions, so it matches the other one. So that's getting me there. And so now what I wanna do with this one is edit the pads. So to give them the sort of twist. So I'm gonna double click and kind of bend one pad and then bend the other pad. And then maybe change the location of this point. And yeah, I think that kind of gives the basic idea. So cool, I like that one. Let's move on to the next one. So this one, I have a fun trick here to show you. So I'm gonna zoom in so we can look at it. So the idea here is that I think we have a pattern of lines that goes horizontally, and then we need to do some operation to sort of have that like, you know, odd and even kind of thing. So it's black and white. So here's where compound paths are gonna do the trick for us. So let me start with another component here. So I'm gonna call that 12. I'm gonna bring my guide so I can have a sense for my lines. So the lines are simply gonna be horizontal lines. I'm just gonna draw a line like so. I'm gonna give it a non-hairline stroke. Then I'm gonna use a linear repeat to create my initial pattern. So, but I don't wanna displace anything in X. I wanna displace about 0.2 because that's like the thickness of the line. Then I'm gonna fill it up so it covers that 4-inch circle. So here's the trick. First I'm gonna flatten it so I don't have to deal with the stroke. So, and so this is what I can do. So if I were to place another circle in the middle, let's place like a 2-inch circle. The trick here is to select everything and then go to edit and create compound path, and then give it a fill. So as you can see, the compound path makes it so it flips between black and white as it goes. It's nicer to give it a black fill. If you're not familiar with compound paths, they are a combination of paths where like whatever is inside of another path turns into a whole. So if I have, say, this circle and another circle, for example, and I were to make these into a compound path, I'm gonna select it, go to edit, create compound path, and give it a fill. You'll see that the circle that is inside of the other one turns into a whole. If I were to create another circle, you'll see how it does that kind of inside-outside thing. If it's inside of the other one, it's a whole, but if it's overlapping, the intersection actually turns into not a whole. So this is the kind of thing I'm exploiting here on the pattern. So what we want to do now is a series of concentric circles. So let me release the compound path to do the operation here. So I want my starting circle to be fairly small, probably 0.4. So it about overlaps that. So then this circle, I'm gonna give it the linear repeat. So I'm gonna use that same trick I used before, which is use a linear repeat with customized repetitions where I scale it by rep every time. So then you can see my series of concentric circles. Then I can increase it, the number of repetitions, until I get a bunch that about matches the 4. And then I'm going to turn all of these into a compound path. So I go to edit and create compound path. And I need to give it a fill, of course. So yeah, it's not exactly the way this one is, but it approximates fairly well, I think. Maybe my lines are a little bit off. And then finally, I suppose I could mask it to, just have a circle. So I'm going to apply a mask. Perhaps this one could benefit from changing the thickness of the line to get it to look closer to that. Okay, not perfect, but I'm going to call it done, especially because I introduced you to that compound path idea. I think the next one I wanted to show you was on page 15, which is this one. It's pretty similar to the one I did first, but I think I can show you another trick. So I'm going to create a component, call it page 15. Maybe I'll bring my guide again. And so with this one, I want to start with that cross in the middle. So I'm going to use the pen tool and just do a simple line. Then I'm going to select it, apply a rotational repeat. That's only 4 of them. Then the crosses could probably be a little bit smaller. So you make it more even. And what I want to do with this one is I want to make it flat, or flatten it, so everything that's black turns into a single shape. And I'm going to reveal the stroke result. And I want the stroke to be now outside of my path. So I make this stroke outside of that cross. So the easy way to do that is to group all of these, so I can assign a separate stroke to that. And then I want to put the stroke on the outside of the shape. So I can change the alignment to outside. So that gets me that first shape over here. Now I want to apply a series of expands. So for example, if I expand this one, I'm going to apply the expand or offset. That creates the next cross, but I actually want to keep on applying them several times. And so the other way in which I can do that is to apply a repeat, a linear repeat, again with no displacement. But then I want to customize each repetition, so I get that rep variable. And so now my expand, the distance that it expands, is going to vary every time. So if I write rep here, you'll see that I get a bunch of kind of out of control expansions, but I can make them a little smaller, something I can control. And I think that's good, actually. 0.17, no, let's keep it at 6. So maybe I don't want my guide. Okay, we can call that one done. All right, so from this one, I want to move over a couple of pages. Let's see, to this one. I think this one is pretty interesting. So let me create a new component. That's going to be page 20. And so the idea with this one is that we want to create a series of triangles with a white circle in the middle. So I'm going to grab my guide. I want to start with the white circle in the middle. Let's make it like 1/2 inch in diameter. I'm going to make it white. Change the color to white. So here's my idea. If I bring a triangle in, I want to make it so when that triangle repeats, it just goes around the circle really nicely. And I could count the number of triangles I get here, just so I know. I got 20 triangles. So let's make black triangle. Let's do a rotational repeat on the triangle to make it 20. And I think that looks pretty good. Like the idea is that the corners are touching, but if I leave it as is, then I get this kind of like jagged circle in the center. So I want to put that circle on top. So I get like a really nice perfect circle, and then I'm going to subtract it from the bottom. So I'm going to use the Boolean difference. So I get the triangles, but then I get a nice circle. So for this one, I think I want to use the this different repeat called the transform repeat, which is kind of like a Swiss army of repeats. You can do a lot of things. So with this one, I don't have to use the scale trick because it has the built-in scale. So for the position, I just want this to be 0. So all the repetitions are on the center. I want a uniform scale, and now I can just scale this up until I see the corners of the triangles just touching each other. So this one doesn't create an even repeat, but it's easier to adjust in some ways, and is more aesthetic. So now that I know that the points of the triangles are touching, I can adjust the number of repetitions. And I know this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it has 7 repetitions. And perhaps it would be fair to start this one with just a black version of the original. So I think I'm just going to duplicate it, but I'm not going to apply the transform repeat. Probably not the Boolean difference. I'm going to make this circle black in the center. And then I probably can make this a little smaller just so it starts with the black version of that. All right, and I don't need my guide, and that is that. So page 20. All right, let's see what's next. Okay, for the next one, I want to jump on the following page over here because this one has an interesting problem to solve. So let me show you. So this one has 24 repetitions, but let's start by creating the component. This is page 21. And so I think that center's sort of scallop shape is easier to make with a circle. Let's make like a 4-inch circle. So if I intersect two circles, I think I get that shape. So I'm going to mirror repeat that. So here I'm just going to adjust it until I get the sort of sharpness that I want out of that sort of scallop. Then I'm going to intersect those two. And that looks good to me. I'm actually going to go to edit and convert to paths just to simplify things. And so now this path needs to be repeated 24 times. So let's make it black and repeat it 24 times with a rotational repeat times 24. So, okay, the first problem here is that it all turns to black. So I can change the stroke to be non-hairline and white. So very close, but you can see how the last repeat kind of gets on the way. Because kind of if we were to overlap a bunch of leaves, then the last one would have to like go under. So I think the easy way to solve this is to just create the shape that is going to be repeating. And so I'm going to do that. So first I'm going to kind of calibrate roughly the size of that hairline of that stroke. So it kind of looks about what I want. And now I'm just going to go ahead and draw one of these shapes. So let me get rid of the rotational repeat. So I know if I duplicate this one, so I'm going to Command D for duplicate. I'm going to move the transform center here. I know I need to rotate it 360 divided by 24 to get the right rotation. And now I can obtain this one shape. So I'm going to apply a flatten to all of these. And this is probably the one I'm going to use the most like destructive stuff. So I'm going to go to edit, convert to paths, and then I'm going to delete this path right here. All right. So now I can repeat this one 24 times. I'm going to modify rotational repeat and 24. And that pretty much gives me that shape. Right now I'm going to do a bit of a jump. I'm going to jump to page 28. So I want to show you more compound pad kind of tricks. So for this kind of flower, let's create another component, page 28. I guess I'm going to repeat that creation of the scallops that I kind of destroyed my previous one. So I'm going to mirror repeat that. That looks good. Then I'm going to do Boolean, not Boolean difference. I actually want intersection. So now for this one, let's see how many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So it's 12. So I can give this a fill. Usually a black fill. I can repeat that 12 times in a circle. So rotational repeat, 12. And as you can see, for the intersections, we want them to be white. So we can use the trick of turning it into a compound path and giving it a fill again. So that's a very quick way of creating this particular shape. The book has, on these pages, they always have like the negative, which is nice. So I think for the negative, I would duplicate this existing one, kind of move it aside, and then give it a white fill. And then, of course, we need to contrast it somehow. So it's nice to have a rectangle that is black that we want behind something like this. Let's put it behind that existing. So that's how I kind of create the negative. So that's like a really fast one with the compound path. Let's jump over to the next page for another compound path kind of version. So this would be page 30. I'm going to go back to using my guide. And so the concept here is pretty similar. I want a circle on the edge. I want a rotational repeat that is 16 around. So let's make it 16. And this one looks like each circle would be just touching the next one. So I'm going to adjust the scale of the circle, of the circles, so they just overlap. Actually, they need to overlap in such a way that each overlap is touching the next one. That looks good. And my usual trick of turning this into a compound path. So edit, create compound path, fill it. Naturally, this one has a center hiding everything. So I'm just going to pull my guide, give it a black fill, and that is that shape. All right, let's see what's next. If I keep on browsing here, you'll see that there's a lot of things that you could construct already with these tools. There's a lot of like repeats and compound paths. So a similar operation. This one is a very clear variation of the one we just did. So that would be page 38. I'm actually just going to duplicate this one, rename it as page 38, and then let's make some changes. All right, so I need to get rid of the center here on that compound path. Now that I got rid of the center, I need another black circle in the middle just to create the center of that. So let's make that black. Let's increase the size until it just touches the edges. There we go. So that's the basic idea. Then I need another circle in the middle that is white. Let's do that. And then I need to connect a line in between each one of these and the center. And that should be a white line. That is not hairline. Probably, so it kind of connects all the way. I need the cap to be square. There we go. So it goes all the way. And so now we just repeat that line around. So I don't know, I thought that was like low-hanging fruit in some ways. Select the line, repeat it around the rotational repeat until it matches. There we go. All right, so that's that one. Next, I have a sort of odd one out that I found right here on page 62. So let's see. Start again with another component. Just gonna bring my guide in. So I'm gonna start by making these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 circles that are increasing in size. And I think in this case, it's convenient to just use the transform repeat. So I'm going to start with a tiny circle over here. Just going to guess the size. And I'm going to use transform repeat to do a sort of convenient scaling. Like so. It's 5. I counted 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. And then we want to scale them uniformly a little bit until I get the kind of look that I'm looking for. I want them to sort of be touching. So here's the interesting trick to get this kind of gooey situation. So if you expand and then contract something by the same amount, you get that effect. So I'm going to apply the expand first. So you can see they kind of join together, and then I'm going to apply the contract. And it was by the same amount, the same distance, and it just works pretty okay. So I'm going to go with that. Now I need to give it a black fill. Let's make that black. And I need to repeat it around. Although I could start with a, yeah, no. Let's move it up a tiny bit. And let's add a rotational repeat. However many times that is, let me count. All right, that one is 16 times. So let's add a 16 here. I think I got it right. Okay, yeah, I need to move it up. That kind of, yeah, that definitely changes things. Less calibrated, so it goes back to being gooey. Gooey is the technical term, so something like that. And then it needs a circle, a black circle in the middle. Pretty close. A little odd to use that technique, but I think it works. All right, I want to do a couple more. I think towards the end of the book, we get a couple that we almost kind of get for free. So this is page 99. Create a new component. I'll call it 99. All right, so this one starts with a simple square or rectangle, an even rectangle. I'll start with a 1/2 inch one. And so this is a sort of like twist and scale situation. So I'm going to select it, apply the transform repeat, make the position not change. We definitely want to scale each repetition, and then we want to rotate it by some amount until we get that twist, like the twist that you can see here. And yeah, I think I'm getting it there. So maybe that one looks more like the twist that we get. So then I'm gonna modify the scale so I get the edges, the corners of the rectangle touching the edges, and then I can increase it. So I'm just gonna increase the number of repetitions until it becomes an even square again. So I get that kind of fun twist going in. Then I'm gonna go to edit and create compound path and give it a black fill. So yeah, let's give it a black. So yeah, I think that's how we get that kind of tunnel twisting thing. I think on the next page, there's another one we kind of get, you get the idea of this one. So I'm gonna do just a couple more, but I think this one is easy enough that we can like do. So we have a circle, we have a square, and then we want to do the same. We want to do the transform repeat. No change in the position, but we can change the scale until we get that. And then to get the black and white situation, it's a simple create compound path and give it a black fill. So I think that one is fairly straightforward. We can calibrate it a bit so it's really touching. There we go. So that's that one. How many repetitions do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Okay, so that works. Towards the end of the book, we start getting into this kind of like halftone situation, which is easy enough to do with the same technique. But perhaps I'll show you how to do a version of these. That would be page 133. So 133. So this one starts with a pattern of circles that are like tightly packed. I'm going to make them 1/4 inch, give them a black fill to just create that sort of halftone effect. So I'm going to create a tile repeat. Displacement would be the size of the circle by the size of the circle. And then let's make just a bunch of repetitions, because I could make like 20. I don't have to make it as big as the page here, but I'll make it conceptually similar. So now I can group these to get the center or the origin right here, right in the center. So I'm going to move the whole thing to the center, and I'm going to place my circle. Did I make it? Yeah, there we go. In the center. All right, so let me make sure this is centered. And with my circle on top, I can give it the compound pad treatment and give it a black fill. So that's how I get that effect. The black circles on the outside and the white circles on the inside. There are other similar versions of these that you probably would know how to do, like this one, for example. And then towards the end of the book, there are these kind of repeat patterns, totally doable. But this one, kind of oddball, I thought. There's this like kind of optical look where I get these lines kind of getting thinner towards the edges, and then you get like the alphabet. So I thought that would be a nice way to finish it. All right, for this one, I'm going to start with a square. So I'm going to grab a rectangle, make it about 4 inches, 4 inches exactly. I'm going to make it into a guide. Then I'm going to start with a single line down the center with some thickness to the stroke. And then I'm going to use the transform repeat because this one has a cool trick. Let's make the position relatively close, number of repetitions. And with this one, you can scale the stroke in each instance of the repetition. So I'm going to scale it down. And so here is mostly a matter of calibrating in between the position and the number of repetitions. You know, how much we want it to vary. Maybe something like these. Maybe we want it a little bit closer, but with more repetitions. And so to give me that sort of like simulated gradient. Then I don't want the cap to be round. Just going to make it like so. So it's just very sharp at the ends. And to make it go towards the left, then I'm just going to mirror repeat that. So that's the basic idea. It starts, it's thick on the center, and then it becomes thinner towards the edges. And now let's place a chunk of text, or just a letter. I'm going to press a capital A, make it big enough to sort of match. I think this one is using a more chunky font, so I'm going to make the 900. I can hide that rectangle now. So now I'm going to give it the compound pad treatment to get that kind of effect. Oh, didn't work because I need to flatten that. I need to flatten these strokes. So let me flatten that. And now it should work. All right, cool. The last thing is I want to be able to change the letter really easy. So on the text, I'm going to extract that as a component parameter. We're just going to leave the letter. I always want it to be uppercase. So here in more options, I'm just going to select the capitalized uppercase. So now I can just change the letter. So B, C. Yeah, so I get all the letters that this page has in store. All right, that's probably a long video, but hopefully there is some interesting trick that I managed to show you and that you can apply to one of your projects. All right, thank you so much for watching. And if you want to help the channel, you can always click like and subscribe. And thank you for watching a long one. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.